Hello and welcome back to the Morning Bulletin here on the Blood Red channel. I'm your host, Edward Kay. Joining me this morning is Ben Bocsak, and if you looked at the title, then yes, you will have guessed we're going to be talking about the quartet of Liverpool players confirmed to be leaving the club this summer. Obviously, we had our suspicions about most of them. Firmino himself had obviously confirmed he was going to be going, but the club officially confirming this week that Naby Keita, James Milner, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and Roberto Firmino will all depart the club this summer. So we're going to go through each one of those for you this morning, speak a bit about them. We'll start with probably the most controversial one, Ben. We'll start with Naby Keita. Very mixed feelings among the fan base about his time at the club, obviously riddled with injuries and never really delivered on what was promised after a £50-odd million move from the Bundesliga that was delayed by a year. Do you think the overall sense is just one of a bit of disappointment with Naby?
Yeah, you have to say, based on the injuries, I think not necessarily just the injuries, but the sort of inconsistency in terms of his performances. Sometimes he could be brilliant and sometimes he could be awful. There's no in between. And I know, part of that will be down to the injuries because he was never really in a full rhythm at Liverpool. But I also think a part of it was just his playing style in general, because he did have a few runs in the side where sometimes he was good, sometimes he was bad. So I do think just overall, even if you remove the injuries aside, I do think he wasn't the type of player that we expected. I know there were a lot of false expectations as well when he arrived. He got the number 8. People saw that he scored a few goals in the Bundesliga. I think around the time there were highlights of long distance goals. So people were saying, "Oh, well, finally we got our Steven Gerrard." Then on the other hand, Felipe Coutinho had just left, and people were saying, "Oh, we got our Coutinho replacement at last." And I think they did misprofile him as well, because he's not similar to any of those players, and completely different sort of playing style. And I don't think in the end that playing style really suited Liverpool.
Yeah, I think the two memories that really come to mind when I think of Naby Keita, you've got the good, and that's the that volley at Atletico Madrid away in the Champions League was unbelievable goal. Obviously showed flashes of brilliance in and amongst, but then the other main memory I've got is also away in Spain, and it's that first half against Villarreal where he just looked like the worst player on the pitch, didn't he? I think that pretty much sums his Liverpool career up, doesn't it? Really, it's flashes of brilliance, but on the whole, just inconsistency, wasn't it?
Mm. I mean, I think that shot he took in the Champions League final last year as well, that stands out for me, I think, among his sort of highlights. But yeah, that's pretty much sums him up.
Yeah, that one came up on my timeline the other day. I'd never scrolled so quickly past something. But we'll move on to Oxlade-Chamberlain now. Obviously, another player who really struggled with injuries. Not so much obviously that there have been consistent injuries, but that one that really sticks in the mind, the one against Roma. It was right in front of the Cop. I was there, and you could just tell the second he went down. It was a bad one, and he was having a cracking run in the side. Obviously, you think of that goal against Man City, having a really good run in the Champions League, and who knows what his Liverpool career could have been if it wasn't for that injury.
Yeah, it was really disappointing because it felt like he was just settling into the side. Scored a cracking goal against Manchester City, and he was really just settling in, and took that Liverpool midfield role by storm. Really, that's he left Arsenal to play in midfield. He finally got that, and he was doing brilliantly. And then obviously the injury was unfortunate. But even after the injury, I think he did really well in the title winning campaign for Liverpool. He scored a lot of goals, some really impressive goals, particularly in the Champions League. I thought he did well. Then again, another injury came along, and I think, unfortunately, like you said, that's sort of the theme of his career at Liverpool is just injuries. And I think it's a real shame that it never worked out for him, because when he was fully fit, he was just like the perfect Klopp midfielder in terms of his energy, his speed, his directness, and like the fact that he could score from long range as well.
Yeah, I think when you look at obviously Liverpool have really struggled in midfield this season. You look at a Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain. If they hadn't had such inconsistent careers at the club, maybe they could have stepped. I mean, obviously they could have avoided injury at any point this season, and they could have stepped in, helped out. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, he definitely seemed like you say, more of a Jurgen Klopp player maybe than a Naby Keita. But again, one where we're just probably going to be left wondering what could have happened if it hadn't been for those injuries. But we'll move on now to James Milner, who's, I think, firmly in the camp of Liverpool legend, isn't he, Ben?
Well, I mean, that's a tough question because we've had some brilliant players. But, I mean, in terms of the trophies he's won, the amount of time he has been here, I mean, he's got to be up there as a memorable character in Liverpool's history. I don't know if he gets the legend status. I think that's reserved for quite a few players. I mean, I think Firmino, who we're going to talk about later, might be in that category. But I think Milner is just below that, and that's no disrespect to him. I think he's been a brilliant player. I just don't necessarily think he's been a legend. But in terms of being one of the best free signings, not just Liverpool have ever made, I think in the history of the Premier League, he's got to be out there for sure. And I think, yeah, I mean, my favourite memory is him um, playing at the new camp and absolutely bodying Lionel Messi, who just rolled around and did a couple of sort of somersaults almost in that 3-0 defeat, which seemed like at the time was one of the worst defeats in the Klopp era. But looking back on it, I think that was one of the best defeats. I mean, the way it worked out for us, obviously.
Yeah, similarly, I've got the challenge on Neymar at Anfield stuck in my head, as well as that the penalty against Leicester with the last kick of the game in the title.
Yeah,
Literally just won the game and then stood there like that. That was unbelievable.
yeah.
But yeah, honestly, like you say, one of the best free transfers in Premier League history. And I'm not exactly sure. Was he 29 when we got him from City? He's
I think
8
it
years
was, yeah.
old.
It
He's
was around that
37.
time.
Yeah, I think he's around 29. Do you think anyone saw, this kind of longevity in his Liverpool career when he signed?
Definitely not. I think even at the time, people were saying he's too old. He's past his best. And yeah, I think, I don't think he's ever been like a regular. He's never been someone who's, been in the starting 11. But in terms of a squad player, I mean, what a squad player he's been. He's played pretty much everywhere on the club, left back, right back, everywhere in midfield. And I think, yeah, those kind of players are not necessarily really appreciated as much. I mean, people still moan about Milner if he plays for Liverpool, but they're so important to have in the squad. And I think as much as Liverpool are losing Firmino, Keita, and Chamberlain, so some big names and big players, I do think Milner is going to be probably the most difficult to replace in the squad.
Yeah, maybe not legend status for him, but maybe we'll stick a rung below with Divock Origi and cult hero for now. But
Yeah.
we'll move on to the final one. Roberto Firmino, obviously the most tragic of the departures. Everyone, I think, is gutted to be seeing him leaving. I think, his goal return this year, he probably could have done another year with Liverpool, couldn't he, really, Ben?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think he's done really well this season. I mean, he obviously hasn't really played a lot from the start, but when he has come on, he's got goals. But again, I think it is kind of the right time if you think about it with a sort of rational head. And I was writing about this as well for Liverpool.com, just looking at the numbers. I mean, obviously Cody Gakpo isn't quite there yet in terms of the kind of output, like goals and assists per 90 that Firmino has produced this season. But, he's still settling in. I think give him a few more months and maybe next season he could be close to it. And then on top of that, Liverpool also have Darwin Nunez, who I think there's still a lot more to come from Nunez as well. So those two together, if they can produce and improve and build on their first seasons, can probably replace Firmino, and then on top of that, you have Diego Jota. Hopefully, he'll be able to stay fit. That's another boost, and now Curtis Jones coming in as well, who can score goals from midfield. I think overall, I think that's why I think Liverpool can probably replace Firmino internally.
Yeah, probably can replace him in terms of that goals and assist output, but I'm not sure they can replace him in terms of a character and in terms of the footwork. I mean, Luis Suarez, unbelievable footwork, but realistically, in terms of players we've seen, sort of this century at Anfield, have there been many more technically gifted than Firmino?
That is a tough question. I mean, yeah, Suarez is up there, but Firmino was one of those who could just surprise you with his first touch in particular. I mean, yeah, he was fun to watch. It's gonna be sad not seeing him in a Liverpool shirt next year, and wherever he goes, I'm gonna be sad seeing him in a different shirt.
Yeah, to be honest, I think depending on where he goes, I might be getting a new Firmino shirt because my old one's still got his number 11 from when he first joined, which was a bit unfortunate. But that is all we've got time for on the morning bulletin today. Obviously, we'll wish all those players well wherever they do end up. But for now, from myself and from Ben, it's thanks.